Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. Jackie, brilliant to have you here. To start with, please could you tell everybody who you are and about your great work?
Well, thank you for inviting me in. I'm looking forward to this. My name's Jackie Fevre. I originally qualified as a zoologist, so I studied animal behaviour and evolutionary biology. Always driven by that big question: why, why does that animal in that environment, when it could do this, it could do that, it could do the other, why does it do that? Where does it even get that from? So that whole big why thing. I was really fortunate. I had the opportunity on graduating to get involved in nature conservation. I spent a couple of years in West Africa reintroducing chimpanzees to the wild. I then had a career in UK nature conservation, worked with County Wildlife Trust, with Wildfire and Mertens Trust, did all kinds of things. But then moved into broader voluntary community sector work and was working with long-term unemployed young people, so 18 to 24-year-olds who were struggling to make it into the labour market. And came to the rather painful realisation that there was an animal on the planet that I had no idea how to understand, and that the naked ape was beyond me. Why people did what they did just went straight over my head. So got really interested in all of that, which led me to set up on my own in 2004 and play in the sandpit of values, basically, with values being these big, emotionally rich, energetic ideas that give meaning to what we do and drive us to make the choices that we do. So yeah, values has been my sandpit for 20 years now.
Okay.
Um,
And a bit
uh,
more of the sandpit, because you had a bit of a moment last year or the year before, didn't you?
I did have a moment when I decided that it needed to not just be play anymore and it needed to get a bit more serious. So I trained as a pure scientist, which is what zoology is. I've always liked data. And one of the things that I assumed when I went into values, and I know you and I had these conversations quite early on in the days of the Values UK Values Alliance, was well, somebody should have done some data by now. There should be some data by now. It's as plain as the nose on your face that this stuff is real and this stuff works. Where's the data? Where's the data? And we spent a few years kind of going, wouldn't it be great if a university did some study? Wouldn't it be great if this happened? Wouldn't it? And it just didn't happen. And so I just got to the point where I went, oh, if I want it to happen, I'm going to have to do it myself. So I did a PhD. And my PhD established some empirical data that shows that consciously connecting to your values is a thing. You can actually bound it. You can say what it is comprised of. And that there are a set of benefits that flow from that conscious connection that are enjoyed by and reported by people of all ages, backgrounds. And that those things can be measured and they show a measurable contribution to subjective well-being. So the long story short is consciously connecting to your values helps you make it through life and helps you feel better. Full stop.
Yeah, it's great to have that evidence there. I'm curious actually to know what your best hope for future work in that space looks like. Not necessarily by you, generally, what would you like to see happen next?
I would like that kind of goes in two directions for me. One is I have a real bee in my bonnet about moral distress and moral injury, which then contributes to burnout, because burnout is a really significant issue. It's particularly visible in public facing services, but it's not exclusively there. It's in all sorts of sectors, in all sorts of roles, and it's avoidable.
Mhm.
So there is some literature now suggesting that. So moral distress is where something about the system stops you from doing the thing you need to do in the way you know it ought to be done. So basically, it stops you being values aligned.
Yeah.
So if we think about COVID, COVID was the big thing that caused moral distress in particularly clinical roles, so patient caring roles, because it was not possible for nurses and doctors and OTs and everybody else to care for folk in the way that they knew was right through human connection. They had to wear a mask, they had to wear a shield, they had to wear gloves. They couldn't give that person who was dying a hug and just say, I've got you. They couldn't do any of that stuff that, oh, in their bones they just knew was what good care looked like. So that's the distress bit. The injury comes when that distress is repeated time and time again, and then it gets to the point where it hurts your heart, so much so that even when you're able to do the thing that you want to do in the right way, you're still carrying the hurt. And that's what then triggers into the burnout, which is where you wake up and you go, I just don't have it in me anymore. I can't do it anymore. So, and there is work now that's showing that conscious connection to values, could be a route out of burnout.
Yeah.
That could be a significant contributor, not the whole thing, it's not the silver bullet, but it's a significant contributor to the route out of burnout. And even more interestingly, could be a buffer against moral distress in the first place. Because if we've got conscious connection to our values, we have a language. And we have a language to be able to go to our boss or the system or ourselves or whoever and say, this is why this doesn't feel right. If it was more like that, it would feel better. What is my opportunity to shift it from A to B?
Yeah.
It's really difficult to have those conversations if you haven't got a language for the thing that's out of kilter.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, is that moral distress, moral injury, repair, burnout strand. The other side of it is that I would just like future work to be hugely practical, rather than the kind of research. Both kinds of research have their place, but rather than the kind of research that just goes whimsically, oh, I wonder if the moon is made of cheese. None of it that we've touched so far is, but that doesn't mean that the rest of it isn't. Let's go find out. Rather than that whimsical stuff, research that goes, what's a real world problem? Where's a real world challenge? What's going on inside organisations? What's really hard for people when they're looking for a new career? What is it about social care that means it's really difficult to recruit people who then want to stay, apart from pay, of course, but there's other conditions. How can values help?
Well, all power to you, because if those two things could be advanced, then we would be in a much better place. And for those people that are listening, you know, the example that you gave of like a healthcare setting, I think that's pretty easy to understand. But then I'd like to throw in another example from the corporate world, which is where I tend to work. And I use an example of a sales guy. And the sales guy's boss says to them, we're coming up to the end of the month and we're a little bit short of our target and the team needs their bonus. So could you go and sell some more stuff to, you know, your favorite client who gets on really well with you? And the guy says, well, I just sold them some stuff last month, so they don't actually need any more. And his boss says, yeah, but are you listening to what I'm saying? Because the team needs to get their bonus. And so will you go and sell them some stuff? So he says, okay, I'll go and do that. And he makes an exception. He holds honesty very true and he doesn't feel right about it, but he understands why he's being asked to do it and he does it once. And then it happens again and again and again. And then one day he wakes up and he can't do this anymore. I would love us to have a handle on that because I don't think we understand the power of the drip, 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 drip.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's it. It erodes our sense of self.
Yeah.
And bluntly, that's really bad for us.
Yeah.
It's bad. And it's interesting because it's bad not just psychologically but physiologically as well.
Yeah.
Because when you get into that situation, that basically there is a background level of stress that's constant, then our brains go into hypervigilance around threat, and we are more likely to produce cortisol and have adrenaline surges that are not actually adaptive. They're not useful. They're not for something. They're not making us get out of the way of a saber-toothed tiger. And so it's just coursing through our veins. We are in a biochemical hijack, and then that changes heart rate and heart and blood pressure and things, and it literally puts more wear and tear on our physiological systems. So it's bad for us. It's just bad for us.
And actually, you've reminded me of a colleague of mine, and this is kind of the positive side of the coin that we're talking about. He moved jobs, and when he got to his new place, and I saw him after he'd been there for about 3 months, and he said he arrived, and people were very warm and welcoming, and he found himself questioning why people were being so helpful and asking himself, what do they want from me? Because they're being nice to me. Because his reference was his previous organization, which was wholly toxic. And that's the way the organization worked. And what he told me was that after about 2 months, it suddenly dawned on him that there was no other agenda. It was just that they were normal, good people,
Yeah,
which is amazing.
absolutely, absolutely, and it happens at every age, and it's part of the reason why it's so important to tackle bullying in schools and promote a culture of inclusion and acceptance in schools. Um, I have had personal experience of a young person who was bullied at primary school, and they moved to primary school. And when you're little and you move school, all of a sudden, oh, the new kid, oh, and people dance around, kind of, oh, it'd be lovely to be their friend, oh. But this persisted, this kind of celebration of this person moving into the community, and the child repeatedly on going home went, everybody's been nice to me today again, because it was so alien to everything they'd experienced in the previous school. They really couldn't quite believe it. But it was such an important rebalancing experience. And I think we forget that, and some people it wouldn't occur to people because they're not zoologists. So from a zoological point of view, human beings, long-lived animals. The longer you live, the greater your capacity for learning, because the instinct isn't going to serve you. The environment will change around you. And if you are a long-lived social animal, the more important learning becomes, because the community you're born into is not the one in which you will be an adult, because there will be throughput of members, is not the one in which you will be an elder, and there'll be churn in the so you need to keep being able to read the room and shift and acquire knowledge about new people and look at new dynamics and all of those sorts of things. So we're laying down these lessons to self from a very early age, and we require quite a lot of proof to put them on the shelf and go, yeah, don't know, that one doesn't apply anymore.
Okay, well let's use a card.
Let's jam.
Yeah, well, let's values jam.
That's values.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give them a final shuffle without dropping any. How many piles shall I make in front of me, Jackie?
7.
7 piles, okay. Is that one for every day of the week or something different?
That's one for Miller, magic's number 7 plus or minus 2, because 7 is the average number of chunks of information any human brain can conjure with.
Okay, so I have a top layer of 3 with number 1 on my left and number 3 on my right, and then a lower level of 4 with number 4 on my left and number 7 on my right. So which number pile shall I pick up?
We need number 5.
We need number 5. Okay. And I've got 7 cards here.
In which case we have to have number 5.
Okay, and number 5 is... Now, I know before we talked about, I wonder if we're going to get what sort of card. And you were kind of intimating that you'd like something that wasn't too dull.
Yes, you're being kind. I was kind of like, oh, I really don't hope I don't get one of them. Oh, that's so poetic.
So
Hey,
the first question is, what does excitement mean, and what does it look, sound, and feel like?
sound, feel. So excitement is about um, um, an elevated state of energy and attention. So when electrons are excited magnetically, they move, they oscillate more around their normal orbit. And so the same thing goes for humans. When they're excited, there is more energy, there is more attention, there is a greater breadth and scope of perception going on, because the gates are wide open. We're really, really tuned to a range of possibilities that weren't there before when we were in steady state. So that's kind of what I would say excitement means. What does it look like? Well, it tends to look like people waving their arms about. So it is visibly more active. So there's more going on physically. Also, when you look in the face of someone who's excited, they will often look somehow brighter. It is like the lights turned on. And in that sense, I suppose it's closely associated with inspiration, you could say. It can sound like really fast-paced talking. It can sound loud. It can sound it can sound uncertain. It can sound exploratory, from the point of view that because excitement is opening up the vista of possibilities, it means that there's a kind of, but which mountain shall we climb? Which ice cream sundae do we want? We've never seen such a big menu before. Oh, it's that a little bit of awe and wonder comes in there too. And it feels like fizzing at the end of your fingertips. It feels like sparkles, because it's that energy crackling, static in the moment.
Yeah, what a great start. So listening to what you said, there's a few things to respond to. One is it feels like it opens up this previously hidden source of energy somehow. You know, you compare the excited person or group with the not excited person or group, and it's almost like a different level of capability because of what? And it's kind of quite weird in that way, isn't it? Because it's probably still there in both sets of people. It's just that one, through their excitement, is able to access it and mobilize it, whereas the unexcited people aren't. And then I'm curious about what you said about uncertainty, actually, because I I agree and disagree because I think when I think of somebody who's excited, I think of them, like you said, talking very fast. Whereas when you mentioned uncertainty, I thought, oh, when you're uncertain, actually you slow down because you don't know quite where you're going. Um, and so that felt like a contradiction. So maybe we can explore that a little bit further. And then finally, I just love those. What are words? Is it an what are the words that are like a sound?
Alliterative.
No, is it
Uh,
onomatopoeic?
Onomatopoeic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that fizzing at the end of your fingers and sparkles and I can't spark something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really sums up what excitement is about. This kind of magic, unknown, positive source of energy. So come back to that uncertain bit. Let's just play with that for a bit.
Okay. So I think a thing that is not excitement but can carry a lot of energy is agitation. So agitation is when there is some anticipation of a negative outcome or the risk of a negative outcome. So excitement is not that. In anticipation, in agitation, we can be very uncertain and kind of go, well, I could do that, or that could go so badly, and this, and I've got no idea how they'll react if I do this, and so we get into that iterative space in our heads. The uncertainty in excitement that I'm talking about is the more of the adventuring
Yeah,
uncertainty, is more of the, well, I could do this and it might go like this, and I could do that and it might go like that. I could do this and it might go like that. And it's, well, I mean, all of them would be so great to do, but which one am I? Oh, I'm not so sure because I love the idea of this and I love the idea of that. And if I have chocolate sauce on my ice cream sundae, then it doesn't really go for me with strawberry sauce because chocolate and strawberry, I don't do that. But then maybe I would. Maybe this is the time that chocolate and strawberry would just like float my boat. I don't know. So that's what I mean by uncertainty.
got you. Yeah. So maybe it's I'm translating that more into choices. So rather than focusing on the uncertainty, it's more about this smorgasbord of stuff out ahead of us that we can choose from. And you've reminded me, I watched a video, it was an interview with, do you know Jacob Collier, the musician? Okay, so he was being interviewed, and he's got a reputation for doing weird stuff in music. And I'll send you the link. I think you'll enjoy it. And one of the things that he said was that what he enjoys doing is putting together things that don't normally go together or people have never put together before to see what happens. You know, he's got this real childlike curiosity and excitement about him. So he'll say, you know, so what happens if you take classical music and yes, and you put it together? What do you get? I'll send you that because I think that he typifies what we're talking about here. One of the other things he's created actually is an instrument. So, what's the best way to describe this? He travels all over the world performing big concerts, right? And part of his act is that he gets the audience to sing and join in. So he'll get proportions of the audience to sing a particular note or sound or whatever it is. He has then recorded all of that from all of these different locations all over the world. And he's then created, I can't remember what it's called, it's an audience instrument where he's got these sounds being sung by thousands of people in different locations all over the world in a machine that you can use. So he does this demonstration where he says, so here I'm using the oo sound, and I don't know anything about music, but it's something like, so oo sound at B flat. And here we have the audience from Brisbane and Prague and Las Vegas together. This is what it sounds like. It's just like, wow, how does somebody actually think to do that? It's just brilliant. Okay, I've just gone off at a complete tangent there because I got excited.
And that's what can happen with excitement.
So let's bring it back to a very grounded question. When have you experienced excitement?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I get excited about all sorts of things. I get excited about the point in the spring when my shallots finally show through the soil. I do, because I just get really, really excited about my vegetable garden. And most people would kind of go, Jackie, that's so dull. And I go, but it's really exciting. because you don't know what kind of a season you're going to have, and I'm growing some things I haven't grown before. So honestly, my excitement can range from that kind of thing to and everyday moments. I was in Bristol yesterday. I was running a workshop. I came back on the train. I live in North Wales. Train journey was an absolute nightmare. So ended up back much later than I wanted to be. But the upside of being back much later is that where I live in North Wales is right on the edge of a dark skies area. So when David picked me up and we were driving home, it was pitch black, really clear night, and oh my word, the stars were amazing last night. And I got very excited about the fact that in a couple of weeks' time, there's going to be a planetary parade. The Earth is going to be in alignment with 5 other planets, and some of them are going to be visible from the naked eye. And this only happens like once in like nearly forever. So I then started getting excited about this thing that's coming because of what I could see in the sky. So that stuff excites me. I get excited about data. I got very, very excited doing my PhD when I ran the first analysis on the first quantitative survey, and it came back and went, this is not only highly statistically significant, but actually has got a measurable effect size that matters. When the data came back and said that those people who were consciously connected to their values and had the benefits from it were reporting levels of personal well-being that were 28% higher than people who did not have the connection. Over a quarter of their subjective well-being could be explained by the strength of their connection to values. That was pretty blinking exciting. Not a therapist or a drug in sight. And people were able to feel better. I got very, very excited about that. And I often get excited when either existing or new clients come and ask me if I can do something I haven't done before. They come and they go, here's our situation. Is there a way that we could use values to respond to this situation, solve this situation, to move us forward from where we are? Is there a way to use values? I love that because that then plays into my personal creativity value. So I get very excited when there is an opportunity that is almost but not quite a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, so just to recap then, we've applied excitement to Charlotte's data and puzzles, and it's equally applicable. And it's making me wonder, because at the beginning of this conversation, I think when we were talking about it, I was thinking of excitement as a response to what's happening on the outside. But actually, listening to all of those 3 very, very different examples, it feels like instead it might be something on the inside that is activated by a number of different things, or could be activated by a number of different things. And I relate to what you're talking about as well, because yesterday I had a conversation with somebody that I hadn't spoken to before about the topic of kindness. And I shared with her how I'd been speaking to somebody else about creating, or the possibility of creating a group of kindness organizations called K20, which potentially we could align with the G20, so that kindness could inform policy development of the G20 countries. And she said, oh, that would be amazing. And do you know what? Next week, I'm going to a university and they have a kindness function, or whatever it's called. And I think they might be interested for us to have an in-person meeting. Do you think that would work? And then we said, this makes sense and we need a bit of time to plan it, but what about aligning it with Random Acts of Kindness Day next February, so 2026, and it could be the inaugural meeting of the K20, and the university could be one of those. And she said, oh, this is so exciting. So, and I said, well, let's just do it. And it feels like it's already more than a kind of 60% probability that that will happen because she's got a great connection there. They've got all the facilities. They'll get the kudos of being part of this origination. So that's at one level. But then at another level, what's coming to mind is I took my grandson to the Natural History Museum some time ago, and we were coming up to a kind of dogleg corner. So, you turn right and then you're going to turn left. And I just said to him, Jacob, what do you think's around that next corner? He said, I don't know. And so we went up to the wall and crept along the wall to look around. And of course, it was just the continuation of the corridor or whatever it was. But we were in such a state of excitement. And so it's just echoing what you were saying about how excitement can actually apply to such different situations. And that's why I was thinking it's something on the inside that can be applied rather than a reaction to specific stimuli.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that sense, you and Jacob, that was anticipatory. That was the which is the thing with me and martial arts, and they start to come through and go, kind of like, am I going to win first prize in the village show again this year, or whatever it happens to be. And I think that some of that is coming from how we naturally dialogue with the world anyway. So what is the way each of us individually dialogues with the world? So I have a really high priority awe and wonder value, which prompts me to be curious and amazed by things.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't have that value, or they have a value of or fate, the or fate value is to be alarmed by the power of natural forces that we cannot control, which is perfectly sensible. I mean, my goodness me, just look at the fires in California, look at the floods in Spain, just look at the snow that we had the other week, and the disruption that fell from that. It's perfectly natural to look at the forces of the natural world and go, we need to be careful in the face of this. But depending on our way of dialoguing with and connecting to the natural world, that's going to then, I think, spill over into our relationship with excitement. So does excitement need to come from something kind of new and novel? And it can be a bit unknown, but it needs to not be threatening for us to be excited. Or do we come from a whatever this is going to be amazing, wow, let's find out kind of a thing? So I think the first one, if the forces of the natural world and other aspects of society are things over which we need to take care, be cautionary, then probably we need to be attracted into being excited. If we have an awe and wonder, whatever it is, let's just say, kind of a way of dialoguing with the world, it's more likely that we are open to just kind of being able to kind of access something inside and go, because I would be interested in this, I would like that, I'm curious about.
Yeah, I think what you're describing there raises the importance of understanding that not everybody sees it in the same way as we do. And the example that's come to my mind is AI. I'm hugely excited about AI, but I completely understand those people that are, oh my God, but what would happen if? Now, I don't think that kind of it's all doom and gloom is the best approach, but I understand why some people are kind of in that place. And the key, I think, is to realize the importance of positivity generally, not false positivity, but real positivity, but not to suggest that negativity doesn't exist or shouldn't exist. What's your take on AI with your wonder and awe?
Okay, so I I compartmentalize my feelings about AI in the sense that it depends which bit and what for. So, for example, I fully embrace the fact that AI is a very, very intelligent way of reading X-rays. And
Yeah,
if we can put ultrasounds of breast scans through AI and teach it what anomalies look like so that it can say to the people who really, really know what they're looking for, this one looks a bit weird, this one looks a bit weird, when it's just read 2000 in 2 minutes. Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Um, and I think there is a place for AI in companion robots in social care.
yeah,
So simple systems that are able to support people with daily tasks and then learning how to interact with the machine to learn how to interact with that person in supporting them with their daily tasks. So that stuff, fantastic. But I read a paper. So I have never used Chat GPT.
okay.
Okay. I've never used anything to do any of my writing.
Hmm.
And I noticed that on LinkedIn, a number of folk who are in my network are going, oh, it's fantastic. It saves me so much time. It means I can create a post every 2 days, da 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 da. And I'm thinking, yeah. But so then I read a paper, a very recent paper, which was tracking cognitive ability in people who were using AI for writing. So bluntly, do we have any evidence, psychological evidence, that if people outsource that aspect of their creative output to AI, does it actually have an impact? Or does it just like free them up and give them time for everything else? And the paper came back and went, no, actually, outsourcing your writing to AI will make you more stupid.
Yeah,
It will make you less able to write. It will, and I'm paraphrasing, and this is putting my prejudice on it, it will increase distance between you and your authentic voice. You will lose track of how you actually speak,
yeah,
and you will start speaking like it.
yeah.
Um, and the age, and this they found this across all age groups because they did it from 18 to 70. And it was a pretty decent study. It wasn't just like 5 people in a lab. It was much, much bigger than that. Um, but they found that the group that was particularly at risk to ending up dumbed down in their innate, they're not innate, but their personal ability compared to the machine was the 18 to 30s. And that worries me.
Yeah. And it makes absolute sense because I remember at school, I used to be able to do mental arithmetic well. And so I rarely used a calculator when everybody else was allowed to use a calculator. And we used to play some sort of stupid game which involved mental arithmetic, and I just remember doing very well at it. And I'm sure it was because I was practicing, whereas other people were not. And it's not difficult to transpose that situation into what you've just described. Um, and then,
Absolutely. Because the neural pathways in our brain, if we don't use them, the brain will prune them. The
yeah,
brain will go,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
don't
don't
need
need
this
that. Yeah,
memory anymore. I'm going to take that away because I can use that to reinforce the circuit that makes my fingers faster on the keyboard
yeah,
because that's the thing I seem to be doing.
yeah,
So it is a use it or lose it.
yeah. And the bit that so broadly, I'm like, oh, this is super capable, and what are the possibilities? But the reservation I have is that we seem to be pretty rubbish at intention and education. So if I take another example, email, I think is a kind of pet favorite of mine. In an organization, there's no training of how to use email. You know, people are just let free. And so The best example I can think of is when somebody sends an email to 20 people saying, shall we have a meeting about this? And then it creates a whole exchange of emails around blah, 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 going back and forth. And by the time you've read one, it's out of date and has been superseded, rather than this person saying, I'd like to suggest a meeting on the 17th. Could people respond telling me if you're free in the morning? So that, cuts out all of the noise. And the other example that comes to mind is actually a scalpel. And this is, again, oversimplifying it, but just for the sake of making a point. In the hands of a surgeon, a scalpel saves people's lives. But in the hands of somebody with malintent, it can kill people. And I don't think it's any different with all these other tools that we consider. And it's about setting the intention and then enabling people to use it in the best way for the best solutions.
Absolutely. But can I build on your scalpel example and say, in the hands of someone who doesn't know what they're doing, even if they have good intent,
Yeah,
can cause injury.
definitely. Yeah.
And it's that bit, it's the messy middle that worries me, is folk being exposed to and being nudged through whatever mechanism to use something that, given your example of emails, has no guide rails around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, your
Part of
example of,
what I do is I'm a visiting lecturer at University of Hertfordshire on the Masters in Business and Occupational Psychology, which means that I do supervise some student research projects. And the amount of training the university had to put on for all of us about how can we recognise when the student work has been written by ChatGPT and it isn't actually by the student. I mean, there's a whole load of work now that folk have to do just to get back to square one.
yeah.
So there are big hidden costs of AI coming into the world.
Yeah, definitely. And also fundamentally, you were talking about those people saying, oh, I'm now able to do this many posts a week because I'm using ChatGPT or whatever it is. I think they're missing the point because, it is not about how many posts you can send out. So that's their paradigm, and that's become their paradigm. Whereas, in fact, I'm thinking that in the future, um, if you were studying a particular topic, then if you had a means to explain how you use ChatGPT to assist you to find the things that maybe you had blind spots on, and how it did help in the development of your thought processes, then that could be a very valuable way to assess somebody's approach to a particular topic. So it's not actually the output that is the most important thing. And again, if I go back to that maths example, it's all well and good having the answer at the end, but what was the journey that you went through? That's in a way more interesting.
Mm, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so on balance, AI, not a fan.
Okay. All right. So that seems to be a kind of a very firm place for us to wrap up this values jam. And I've got one final question for you. So the final question is, what are you encouraged to do differently about excitement as a result of our conversation?
Um, oh, I don't know, because I'm naturally quite an excitable person. Yeah, yes, I'm definitely an electron that has too much energy. I think the, I suppose, so I do an exercise in one of my workshops where I ask people to go into pairs and then give them 60 seconds flat to tell a story about something they love about their work, is one of the scenarios. Because if they tell a story about something that they love, actually what they're doing is they're connecting with the high priority values. And when those are lived out in work, that's actually what's going on there. And what I see in the room is a lot of excitement, because I see a lot of this, and the volume goes up, and there's lots of nodding, and there's people leaning in and really kind of like, I need this. I want you to really, really understand how amazing it is when I get to do this thing. So I see a lot of excitement, but it does make me wonder whether I might try saying a 1 minute story about something that excited you in work and see whether it works the same way, because it might. And for some audiences, they might be more comfortable talking about something that they're excited about than talking about something that they love.
Great point. Yeah. Okay, well that excites me that you've made some sort of discovery in that way. Mine for today, well, there's two. I said I would send you that link, which I will do, and there's another link that I found as a result of that, which was him at a concert with Chris Martin's performing "Fix You," and made me cry. So I'll send you that as well, and in a good way. It's so that, and you talking about the stars has reminded me how excited I get about simple nature things, whether it's like the stars that you described, or whether it's looking at the veins on a leaf, or whatever it is. So I'm going to I'm going to Manchester this weekend, actually. And so we might well visit a National Trust property up there and be out in open spaces. So I'm going to be tuning into that because of this conversation.
Top tip near Manchester, of course, is Jodrell Bank.
Oh, so we're going to be staying in Altrincham. Is that's south?
Jodrell Bank. Look
Oh,
up look up Jodrell Bank. See what you think.
good tip. Will do.
Okay.
Thanks very much for today's Values Jam, Jackie.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure, Alan. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.